Let me come in. Here's Johnny.
In 1980, as audiences filed into theaters to watch a family's isolated winter at the Overlook Hotel, few realized they were witnessing what would become perhaps the most analyzed horror film in cinema history.
Here's Johnny.
Stanley Kubrick's The Shining wasn't just a haunted house story. It was a meticulous psychological descent into madness that continues to terrify and puzzle viewers over 40 years later. Coming off the commercial disappointment of the visually stunning Barry Lyndon, Kubrick turned to Stephen King's best-selling novel with a budget of $19 million, an unprecedented sum for a horror film at the time. What emerged wasn't the faithful adaptation King had hoped for, but something more enigmatic and disturbing that defied simple categorization. Between the hypnotic Steadicam shots gliding through the Overlook's corridors, Nicholson's unhinged performance, and those unsettling twin girls standing hand in hand, The Shining transcended its genre to become a cultural touchstone. This is a film where nothing is quite what it seems, where time folds in on itself, where geography becomes impossible, and where the hotel itself becomes as much a character as the Torrance family. Today, we're exploring how Kubrick's cold, labyrinthine vision of horror created an enduring masterpiece that viewers still obsessively decode, frame by frame, searching for answers within its perfectly composed nightmare. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining represents a masterclass in technical filmmaking that elevates horror to high art. The most revolutionary achievement was Garrett Brown's Steadicam work, creating those eerily smooth tracking shots following Danny on his big wheel through the Overlook's corridors. These sequences, with their low-position camera gracefully drifting behind the child, create both dreamlike beauty and mounting dread. The technology was relatively new at the time, and The Shining showcased its potential more effectively than any previous film. Equally impressive is John Alcott's lighting design. The Overlook Hotel blazes with unnatural brightness, a complete inversion of traditional horror aesthetics. Instead of shadows concealing threats, Kubrick floods his spaces with clinical fluorescent light that leaves nowhere to hide. The Colorado Lounge, with its massive windows and overwhelming symmetry, becomes terrifying precisely because everything is so visible and ordered. This approach creates the film's signature uncanny atmosphere where something feels profoundly wrong despite the apparent normalcy. The production design merits special attention. The Overlook's impossible architecture, windows where no windows should exist, corridors that lead nowhere, wasn't merely a continuity error, but a deliberate choice. Kubrick and designer Roy Walker created a spatial nightmare where geography constantly shifts. The famous hedge maze, not present in King's novel, becomes the physical manifestation of the hotel's labyrinthine trap. The film's sound design creates tremendous psychological impact through restraint. Rather than relying on jump scares, Kubrick employs Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkins' unsettling score sparingly, often preferring oppressive silence or the distant echoes of the vast hotel. The rhythmic heartbeat-like sounds during tense moments subliminally increase viewer anxiety without telegraphing scares.
Honey, what's wrong?
Kubrick's obsessive perfectionism resulted in legendary production challenges. His record-breaking 127 takes of Shelley Duvall backing up the stairs with a baseball bat didn't just capture authentic terror, they created it. The production stretched over a year, with Kubrick meticulously planning each shot and often rewriting scenes the day of filming. This exhaustive approach wasn't mere tyranny, but a relentless pursuit of authenticity in performances and technical precision in every frame. Perhaps most remarkably, Kubrick achieves his most terrifying effects through simple techniques: a typewriter, an axe through a door, or a mirror reflection. The film demonstrates that true cinematic horror comes not from elaborate effects, but from precise execution of fundamentally unsettling images, proving that technical mastery serves emotional impact rather than mere spectacle. Jack Nicholson's portrayal of Jack Torrance remains the film's centerpiece, a performance that begins with subtle signs of instability and crescendos into pure homicidal mania. What makes Nicholson's work so effective is his decision to hint at Jack's underlying madness from the very first interview scene. His too-wide smile and barely contained frustration suggest the Overlook isn't creating his darkness, but merely awakening what was always there. The iconic, "Here's Johnny,"
Here's Johnny.
moment, improvised by Nicholson himself, captures the character's complete psychological collapse. A man who has transformed from frustrated writer to axe-wielding monster. Shelley Duvall's performance as Wendy Torrance deserves recognition that critics initially failed to give. Her portrayal of escalating terror, from nervous wife to traumatized survivor, provides the emotional core of the film. The baseball bat scene, where she backs upstairs while swinging wildly at her advancing husband, conveys such authentic fear that it's difficult to watch. Kubrick's notorious treatment of Duvall during production, isolating her and demanding countless takes, resulted in a performance where the line between acting and genuine distress blurs uncomfortably. Perhaps most remarkable is Danny Lloyd's performance as Danny Torrance. Child actors often struggle with horror material, but Lloyd brings unsettling maturity to scenes where he converses with his imaginary friend Tony, his wiggling finger, or stares traumatized after encountering Room 237. The famous tricycle sequences, where Danny rounds corners potentially facing horror, create unbearable tension through his innocent perspective. Lloyd's portrayal of The Shining itself, the psychic episodes where his face contorts in silent screams, achieves genuine supernatural dread without relying on special effects. Scatman Crothers brings essential warmth as Dick Halloran, the Overlook chef who shares Danny's psychic abilities. His exposition about The Shining grounds the supernatural elements in human connection, making his eventual return to help the family and shocking fate all the more impactful. Crothers reportedly broke down crying after completing his demanding 40-plus takes of a single scene, demonstrating the emotional toll of Kubrick's methods. The film's most haunting scenes merge these performances with Kubrick's visual precision. Jack's conversation with the ghostly bartender, Lloyd transitions seamlessly from delusion to supernatural reality. The revelation of what Danny witnessed in Room 237, the decomposing woman embracing Jack, creates visceral disgust through pure performance. And the photograph reveal in the final moments, placing Jack impossibly at the Overlook decades earlier, leaves viewers questioning everything they've witnessed about the nature of the hotel and its hold on the Torrance family. When The Shining opened in May 1980, critics delivered a shockingly mixed response. Variety called it a disappointing adaptation of Stephen King's bestseller, while Time magazine branded it too cold to be genuinely frightening. Perhaps most notably, the film received 0 Academy Award nominations, and Kubrick himself earned a Razzie nomination for Worst Director, an assessment that seems absurd in retrospect. Stephen King's well-documented disdain for the adaptation has become legendary in film history. King publicly criticized Kubrick's cold intellectual approach, and particularly objected to the casting of Jack Nicholson, arguing that an actor with a more everyman quality would have made Jack's descent more shocking. King's disappointment eventually led him to produce his own television miniseries version in 1997, a more faithful, but critically less successful adaptation. Yet what's fascinating about The Shining is how dramatically its reception transformed over decades. By the late 1990s, critical consensus had shifted dramatically, with many publications revising their initial assessments. Today, It routinely ranks among the greatest horror films ever made and appears on countless best films of all time lists. The film that critics once dismissed has become one of the most studied and analyzed works in cinema history. This evolution in reception reflects how the film rewards repeated viewings. Initial audiences, expecting conventional horror based on King's popular novel, encountered something more abstract and psychologically complex. The deliberate continuity errors, changing room colors, impossible window placements, and vanishing furniture initially seemed like production mistakes. Now they're understood as Kubrick's intentional disorientation techniques designed to create subconscious unease. Hidden details that seemed insignificant in 1980 have become the subject of endless analysis. The recurring motif of mirrors throughout the film suggests doubled identities and alternate realities. The Native American decorative elements throughout the hotel have prompted interpretations about American historical violence. Even the brand of Jack's typewriter, a German Adler model, has fueled theories about Holocaust subtexts, given Kubrick's interest in the subject. What was once seen as the film's greatest weakness, its cold, detached perspective and ambiguous supernatural elements, has become its greatest strength, ensuring that The Shining continues to reveal new layers with each viewing decades after its controversial release. 4 decades after its release, The Shining has transcended its status as merely a horror film to become one of cinema's most influential works. Its DNA is visible across modern filmmaking, from direct homages to subtle inspirations that continue to shape how directors approach psychological horror. The film's technical innovations permanently altered horror's visual language. The Steadicam techniques pioneered in those tracking shots through the Overlook's corridors have become standard tools for creating dread. Films like Hereditary and The Babadook directly reference Kubrick's approach to spatial disorientation and symmetrical framing to create unease. Ari Aster's Midsummer particularly echoes The Shining in its sun-drenched horror aesthetic, proving that terror doesn't require darkness. Narratively, The Shining legitimized psychological horror that refuses easy explanations. Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep, 2019, a direct sequel based on King's follow-up novel, had the impossible task of reconciling King's and Kubrick's divergent visions. That a sequel emerged decades later demonstrates the original's enduring cultural power. Flanagan's other works, particularly his Netflix series, The Haunting of Hill House, show clear Kubrickian influence in their ambiguous, supernatural elements and family trauma themes. The film's imagery has achieved unparalleled pop cultural penetration. The twin girls holding hands, the elevator of blood, Red Rum, and Jack's frozen grimace in the maze have been referenced in everything from The Simpsons to music videos to fashion campaigns. The phrase "Here's Johnny" has detached completely from its original Johnny Carson reference to become synonymous with Jack's madness. Even people who've never seen the film recognize these elements, a testament to their iconic power. Academically, The Shining has generated interpretive theories unlike any other horror film. The documentary Room 237 showcases readings ranging from commentaries on Native American genocide to elaborate conspiracies about Kubrick's involvement in faking the moon landing footage. While some theories stretch credibility, this interpretive richness speaks to the film's symbolic depth and Kubrick's layered approach to storytelling. The Overlook Hotel, with its impossible spaces and cyclical time, serves as the perfect metaphor for the film itself, a creation that continues to reveal new corridors and hidden rooms no matter how many times we visit. As Jack has always been the caretaker, The Shining seems to have always been with us, its influence spreading endlessly like the hotel's ghostly reach, ensuring that we'll be checking into Kubrick's masterpiece of psychological horror for generations to come. What's your favorite moment from The Shining, and which modern horror film do you think most clearly shows its influence? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the films that changed cinema forever.